right into it. And welcome back to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. I'm your host, Bob Kirwan, and as promised, in the studio today we have James Tregonning, who is running for the Liberals in the Nickel Belt riding in the upcoming provincial election, which is scheduled for June 12th. And James had to get through the construction on Regent Street, so we're not going to waste any time. James, welcome to Provincial.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, it's great. The Learning Clinic radio show has been bringing in candidates for council. This is basically what I'm dedicating this time for. But with the calling of the provincial election, we're going to invite all of the candidates for the provincial election in, so that listeners have a chance to become more aware of what the issues are and what the differences are in the parties. It's a little different than municipal elections, so I'm looking forward to it. And just so that people understand, if you want to listen to this again, if you go to thelearningclinic.ca sometime tonight or tomorrow, this entire show will be uploaded by video, so people can go back and listen again, and you can use it in part of your campaign. So let's get right into it. James, who is James Tregonning, and what are we doing here for the next 4 weeks?
Well, James Tregonning is somebody who's lived in Nickel Belt for a very long time. I've lived in Coniston basically all my life. I did move to Toronto and Wasaga Beach to work for the provincial government. I started working with the Ray government, and then the Harris government, and then the McGuinty government. And my father, unfortunately, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer a few years ago. And I quit my jobs and came back to help my mother with his care. And that's why I came back into the region. I never worked with the Wynne government before. So I have 20 years plus of experience in government, writing all kinds of what we call MB20s in government, which is the cabinet submissions. I started many programs, Telehealth Ontario, Family Health Teams, just to mention a few, for the greater good of all the people of Ontario. My last endeavor was with community health centers, and the development, of course, of the Family Health Teams model that really structured primary healthcare service delivery for Ontario. And I'm very proud of those achievements.
Yeah. So you've seen the way things run, and both on the floor and in the offices in the background.
I've seen it from the NDP government to the PC government to the Liberal government. I've seen it all and lived through it all. Yes, indeed.
Any particular reason why you want to get on the floor?
Well, I actually miss politics. I absolutely enjoy politics.
People have a hard time understanding that when I talk to them about my own. But it is. It's exciting when you talk about the people who have been in it for a long time.
It's very, very exciting. When we start new programs for the people, it's extraordinarily exciting. And we don't have that opportunity in the north to do these kinds of things because, our central is Toronto.
Right.
And you actually have to move to Toronto if you want to get on to, if you want to ride the wave, if you will. You have to be in Toronto in order to do this because you're working 24 hours a day. You're working every day of the, I remember sleeping under my desk for 3 months.
Not working, you're driving.
Exactly. And when I lived in Wasaga Beach, trust me, that's a 6-hour commute. 3 hours one way, 3 hours the other. So
what a nice change of pace.
It is. It is.
To get back to Wasaga. So we have a provincial election coming up.
Unfortunately, we do. Yeah.
What are we looking for from the Liberals? What are the Liberals trying to?
Well, the budget that unfortunately the NDP didn't support is probably the most socialist government ever seen in Ontario. It's got some really good things helping the poorer of the poor, increasing welfare payments. That was voted against. I mean, people didn't, like the NDP, don't want to support this. $29 billion dedicated to fixing potholes right across Ontario. This is a huge issue for municipalities. Increase to municipality stipends in order to promote infrastructure changes and infrastructure upgrades. I mean, these are important issues for the people, and unfortunately, those issues now have to go to an election. So that's why we're here. The NDP didn't support the budget. I don't know why, but that's why we're here.
So if we're looking for a difference, and we will, as the conversation goes on, you can point out how in the nickel belt and the Sudbury area, how some of the provisions of the budget would definitely have made a difference here. Potholes being one. But if you can take a look at how it's going to affect locally, but also the differences, because one of the features of provincial politics and federal politics is that the parties are not all the same in terms of what their platforms are and what their vision is for the future. So if we had to say what makes the Liberal candidate distinct, is there anything you can put your finger
Well,
on?
you know, I got a Facebook question last night from a constituent basically asking me, what is this all about? What is the difference between a Liberal, a Green Party, an NDP, or a PC? What is this all about? And how am I supposed to pick the right candidate when I don't even know what all the parties are standing on?
I like that question.
And that's a great question, and you know, hats off. I only have permission to mention her first name, so Pierrette, thank you for the question.
Okay.
But the bottom line, the way I like to talk about it is let's take the PCs for example. The Progressive Conservatives are always known as the right wingers. They lean right,
Okay.
and then you have the NDPers that lean left, and never the two shall meet. Well, the Liberal Party is right smack in the middle. And I think Jean Chrétien defined the Liberal Party the best when he said, you campaign social, but you govern on the right side of the fence. So you govern conservatively, but yet you campaign socially. So Liberals are right in the middle. Sometimes we lean to the left, and sometimes we lean to the right. And I think that is the best place for me to be, because I can see the best of both areas, right? And that's where I like to be. A lot of people say Liberals are on the fence. You don't know if you're on one party or the other party. Well, that's not true, because we see the best of both parties and we bring those two parts together.
I don't even know if this is a term, but is that kind of situational governing?
Not necessarily. I wouldn't agree with
Or
its situation.
It may be the wrong word. It kind of governing according to what is best at the time.
It's governing to what the people want.
Right.
Right? And that's the bottom line, and that's where I see myself is, you know, a lot of times people define politics in 100 different ways, but the way I define politics is by definition. It's the act of making good decisions. It's the way a particular community or a particular group governs themselves by making decisions. We have a legislature, and that's our politics. So in order to make good decisions, you have to engage in politics. Politics is not bashing. Politics is not about putting someone down or putting a group of people down or about mudslinging to opposing views. That's not politics. Politics is about getting the best product for the people. That's politics, and making the good decisions in order to bring forth the best product.
I guess you have to be aware of what your constituents'
Absolutely.
feelings are.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that you do or you plan on doing?
Well, my campaign is called Building the Future.
Okay.
We need to start focusing in particularly on infrastructure issues in Nickel Belt. We need some good roads. You know, we have Highway 144, even though part of it was resurfaced, part of it needs to be resurfaced. And Highway 144 is an issue because there's no shoulders on that road. If you blow a tire, you're right in the middle of the road, and heaven forbid you do this in the wintertime where you are taking an entire lane. It's a very dangerous highway. A lot of people call it the northern death trap even. You've got to be able to look at how we can best fix that problem. The highway was designed in 1962 by the Conservative government. At that point in time, they wanted to cut some dollars and save some cents, and they decided not to put wider shoulders. They decided to put 1.5 feet worth of shoulders on that highway. It's not enough. So we need to look at how to best put our money into infrastructure issues. One of the other pillars of the campaign, besides infrastructure, is senior care. And what I mean by senior care is not just the healthcare related. It's also housing, it's also pension structures. There's a lot of things that we need to do in order to help the senior citizens of our communities. These people are the most cherished people of our communities, and we need to look at ways to do that. One of my campaign points is definitely to look at affordable housing for seniors, look at ways of reducing electricity costs for seniors that are in their homes, keeping the seniors in their homes longer by increasing supports, not only in terms of home care, not only in terms of health care, but also in terms of providing them with, some dollars and cents at the end of the day, some rebates on their electricity costs. Even though that exists, we need to strengthen that a little bit more, and that's what our budget was doing. The third one, well, there's a lot of it in the budget, but that was part of it. And the third pillar is on economic diversification. We need to look at creating ways of stimulating the economy. I hear the PC saying, we're gonna create 1 million or 1 billion jobs. Government is not the one who creates these jobs. That's not the role of government. The government should be stimulating the businesses who would create the jobs. Because the only way a government can create jobs is by increasing the public service, the people that work for them. So no, we need to look at ways, and economic diversification would be, in my opinion, increasing some of the funding for the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund that would basically stimulate businesses to make application, hire new people, and diversify their particular portfolios.
So your platform and the issues that you're trying to address are really the central issues in the municipal campaign as well.
It's all tied together when you look at it, yes, absolutely.
So a lot of the responsibilities locally in terms of infrastructure, housing, senior care, economic diversity. Is this where the municipalities then become really dependent upon the partnership with the province in terms of funding? In terms of meeting the goals of, I'll put it this way, Nickel Belt and the Sudbury riding, the city of Greater Sudbury is divided up into the two. So when we're talking about the Nickel Belt riding, we're talking about a good portion of the city of Greater Sudbury.
That's right, yeah. The dependency exists already because the province does give X number of dollars according to the magic formula to the municipalities for this, that, and the other thing based on the population needs and the economic forecasts. I think that needs to be changed personally, and I would work very hard to make sure that those funding mechanisms do change in order to reflect the reality of the situation. You can't just use a funding formula and plug in some numbers and expect it to be true. You have to actually know the ridings. You have to actually see what's going down on the street, basically to understand how that street operates.
And you live in the south, so there's a difference between the way the formula would work in the north
Absolutely.
and the south, isn't it?
Absolutely. I've lived in the south and I see how that works, but the rural index that they call is not a northern issue. I mean, you have to have a specific northern funding mechanism. The magic numbers that you plug in can be realistic, let's say in Mississauga South, but when it comes to Nickel Belt, it's a whole different ballgame, right? Because the municipality would actually get, the greater city of Sudbury would actually get stipends for this, that, and the other thing. We need to strengthen that. We need to look at, we've got an aging population in Go-Gamma. What are we going to do about that? And who's that municipality? Is there a municipality? Oh, it's an unorganized township. Well, how do we do that? How does that work? So each riding has their own issues, and you have to be able to, walk the streets and understand the issues of all the different areas in order to provide the best funding, the best dollar, and to get the best bang for your buck.
So, is there a plan?
Yeah, absolutely. The budget did have some good things in it, which unfortunately is not being supported. One of the major issues was the $29 billion for infrastructure spending and the changes to the municipality indexes. Now, when Charles Sousa was here, and I've been working very closely with the government to try and get some very important issues for Nickel Belt and Sudbury aligned. The infrastructure spending was one thing that we were very, very successful in getting into the budget. The other thing that my team and I worked very hard on was to try to get something for Maley Drive. And we did. We managed to get that into the budget. And unfortunately, that wasn't supported. So, yes, there is a way to get it done. We are working at it, it's chipping away at it, but we are working at it. And we had some really good things put into this budget, and unfortunately, we now have to put it in the hands of the people. If the people want to see this happen, it's up to them to make the correct choices.
A lot of the dances that take place, though, municipally, involve two other partners. Like, there's the province and the federal partners, and it really boils down, it seems to boil down that some of the major infrastructure projects and some of the major development projects involve three parties all dancing to the same tune. And I can see the Maley Drive as a perfect one. It seems as if we've had three different records playing at the same time for years on that one. Any thoughts on, because now we basically have two people dancing to the same tune? But the third person isn't listening to the same music yet.
Yeah, not yet. In order to be a good leader, you have to be able to reach out to everybody. So one of the things that I know my particular skills are is consensus building. So even though somebody may be singing a different song, the bottom line is people need it. And the bottom line is it's something that needs to be done. And you know what? The party right now who's dancing to the other tune realizes that. So somebody needs to step up to the plate and say, hey, here's the situation on the ground. People need this done. How can you help to get it done? Put your politics aside, put everything and leave it alone, and think of the person that really needs this. How can we make it happen for that person? And I can guarantee you the person that's singing that other song will stop and take a moment and think about it. And probably in a couple of days, call me back and say, you know what, you're right, let's talk. Somebody needs to start doing that. We need to start coming together. And we need a leader to bring us together.
So what's been preventing that?
Well, politics, power struggles. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's power struggles. We're in the middle of a provincial election because of power struggles. This budget is a good budget. It's the most socialist budget Ontario has ever seen, and I just can't understand why Andrea Horvath and the NDP couldn't support it. I just don't understand that.
Well, why would they say we can't afford it? Because obviously, if it's been put together, there has to be a revenue side as well as a...
The revenue side is clear on how they plan on, or how we plan on raising the money. But the bottom line is, we need to start stimulating the economy. I mean, the US have seen this. The US economy is now starting to grow a lot faster than it did. But the government did put in a huge stimulus package. Yes, there was the huge fiscal cliff, and yes, there was all the politicking that was going on in the US a few years ago, even last year, about these issues. But you know what? It's happening today. The economy is starting to grow. And we need to do that in Ontario as well. And we've done that with this budget. And here we are putting it in the hands of the people. The fact that over $600 million was cut from healthcare by the federal government to Ontario, and we're the only province that got over $600 million of healthcare cuts. We haven't touched healthcare in the budget. We've increased it. So we're assuming that, and the funding is there for that. So everyone's saying we can't afford it, but yet you have to make some hard decisions when you're in government, and you have to make the decisions in order to stimulate the economy. Charles Seuss has said in the House, yes, the deficit will go up a little. Yes, it will go up a little, but the greater good of that will happen. And the balancing of the budget, according to our fiscals, will definitely happen in 2016. So we're looking at a 2-year recuperation. But the most important part is, in order to stimulate the economy right now, we have to increase those fundings. We have to put that money there so people get back to work.
The labor unrest situation with education for one thing. I'll talk education because I'm a trustee with the Rainbow Board. But that has to be weighing pretty heavily on the minds of everybody right now, because the teachers are in a situation where their contracts are up at the end of the summer.
Bill, and I'm going to say the evil word, but Bill 115 was a huge, huge error. And I will say that. It was something that was corrected with Bill 121, and we managed to get that through. But Bill 115 was an error. That bill was rescinded, that legislation should have never happened. I myself advocated against Bill 115 and will strongly recommend that this never happen again in Ontario. I hope the teachers are listening very carefully because I'm certainly on their side on this one. Bill 122 was negotiated with the unions. There's a lot of good things that are put into that bill. Most of the revisions, if you will, or amendments that the unions wanted were implemented in the bill. It's great. It's something that is a feather in our chapeau, if you will. The other issue is Tim Hudak. I mean, has anyone heard of Wisconsin and what happened in Wisconsin a few years ago? We certainly don't want to see that in Ontario. We don't want to see unions brought down. We don't want to see unions busted over a government disagreement. And Tim Hudak has certainly made it very clear that the war on labor will start as soon as he's in power. I know he kind of backpedaled a little bit, but the bottom line is, in the papers this weekend, he even said, it was in the Toronto Star, the unions have been running this province for too long. And to me, that scares me. When I hear comments like that, that truly scares me. And here we are going into an election where the NDP supported that. And it just makes no sense to me.
Safety, health and safety, especially in the workplace. I mean, recently, the latest fatality at Ballet was actually touched my family because it was my daughter-in-law's brother. You've grown up in Sudbury. I lived in Lively. My wife lived in Creighton. Safety has always been front and center, and it seems as if more is being done to make the workplace safer. Any parts of your platform that are moving forward on that front?
Absolutely. I mean, the strengthening that the government what we did with Bill 168 and 169 were first, we were first out of the gate for health and safety reform. More needs to happen. The Wynne government basically sat down with the unions and said, you know what, a mining review needs to happen. The mining review is ongoing, and I hope the recommendations are going to be implemented by the new government, and hopefully it's going to be the Wynne government, so that we can continue with that strength. Workplace health and safety on all aspects, whether you're in a mine, whether you're in an industrial, or whether you are sitting behind an office desk, is number one on everyone's mind, because at the end of the day, you spend a lot more hours at work than you do at home. And you need to be able to feel safe, and your family should be able to be feeling safe that, my husband or my partner is going to work and I know he's going to or she's going to come back. And that's an important safety feature for everyone to have in their mind. And to me, it's a no-brainer. You've got to do it. Mm-hmm. So strengthening 168, 169, and strengthening workers. Basically, that's what you're doing. You're supporting your workers and you're supporting your people. Right? A happy worker is a happy workplace, and a happy workplace is a productive workplace. So everyone benefits, including the employers.
I imagine energy is going to be a hot topic over the next few years, a few weeks too, in particular.
Yeah.
Hydro and.
There are different ways. I know in Coniston, when I was growing up, we had a pilot project going. I don't know if you remember that, Bob. We had the windmill. We used to call it the windmill over at the hydro dam in Coniston. There was this big windmill put on the mountains behind Coniston, and it was the genesis, if you will, of the wind farms. That particular program actually was started by Peterson, and it was a great project. And I would like to see more of that happening here. If we can find ways to use energy, the energies that we have available, solar energies and wind energies here in Nickel Belt and Sudbury, in order to reduce some of the electricity costs for our northern residents, then more power to us. If we can have an area of crown land dedicated for a wind farm, or if we can have solar panels put up on some mountain somewhere that it will be able to be plugged into the grid, these are good things. And that's what I would be looking for. I'm looking for opportunities in order to divest some of our energies, if you will, into renewable energy infrastructure.
Yeah, that's it's a good goal. Mental health and wellness, it's another big topic, especially with youth and workplace stress. And I think the latest statistics are talking about 1 out of every 5 young people have some kind of a mental health issue that gets in the way of their day-to-day activities, and now the numbers seem to be creeping for adults to closer to 2 out of 5 that have something that affects their day-to-day living.
Absolutely.
That gets into productivity, it gets into healthcare, it gets in, we haven't even talked about healthcare. Maybe that's a good segue into healthcare. How do you talk about those big items when you're talking to the people in Nickelbell?
You know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I don't know if anybody knows that, but mental health is a huge issue right across the board. Like you're saying, mental health prevention, because there are strategies that you can use for prevention. I know, you know, concussion issues for one, sports and youth with head injuries. These are all issues that can be prevented, and we need to put some infrastructure dollars, if you will, for lack of a better term, into promoting these types of prevention programs that can happen. There are some biological and some chemical issues regarding mental health that need to be looked at. You know, we don't want everybody on particular drugs, but are there other avenues that can be used? Can you be making better, you know, nutrition choices, if you will, that would help break down some of the chemicals? These are things that can be done, but we need the infrastructure dollars in place. One of the things that I was going to be working on with Deb Matthews, a good friend of mine, Deb and I have worked together for, well, the past, a good 10 years, was to look at ways of increasing nutrition. So we had a program that was strengthened in the government, or in the budget actually, on student nutrition programs, and that was going to be increased. Where I was also trying to get Deb to look at subsidies for naturopathic care. That's a huge contentious issue, but it's something that I truly believe in. You know, trying to get some of the remedies, if you will, from natural products covered by OHIP. Huge endeavor, huge endeavor, but it's something that I think we need to start talking about, and that's certainly on my agenda.
Is the budget going to be the central focal issue
Of the campaign?
Of this campaign?
That's a good question. I personally believe, I'm not sure what Central Campaign is going to say to this, but I say yes. This is a good budget. This is something that Ontario needs. And it's something that I certainly will be advocating for throughout my particular campaign. Any
particular ways that you're going to get across to, or get around to the nickel belt? Because one of the criticisms has been that nickel belt is such a large riding to travel, even on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's...
And any ideas on what you're going to do over the next
well,
because it's only 4 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, it's very quick. I've got some key people, you know, in the outmost areas. I physically won't be able to get everywhere. I've already been to Gogama. I plan on going to Foleyet. I plan on going to Matagami. I will go to those areas. But I've got some key people there that'll promote as well. So I'm hoping that the team will help. We do have some literature that we'll be going door to door with. And the bottom line is, what I'm asking everybody to do is talk about it. Because the bottom line with politics is we have to start talking again. Nobody is talking. There's no more relationship between people and government. And that's sad. We need to start talking about issues. Go to Tim Hortons. Talk about it at your table. It's not just about, you know, the sale that's going on at Sears, or, you know, the great sale that's going on at Canadian Tire. It's about politics. It's about what you need. And this government needs to do what. That's the stuff that I want to hear.
And you know, it's a good segue into this, because when you start taking a look at provincial and federal politics, it's almost as if you've inherited the votes of your ancestors. It's like if your family has always voted Liberal, your family is voting Liberal, and God help you if you vote anywhere else. How do you change that? Or is there gonna be a natural change because we've got a 21st century generation coming in that really doesn't have any loyalty to any particular party? Like have I started to answer my own question, or because it is a problem.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you've got certain ridings that have been Liberal forever, NDP forever, and how do you break the mold when you're trying to get people more aware of the issues when all they want to do is look at the color of your shirt?
Yeah, that is a huge issue. I think that the best thing is, how do you answer that? Boy, that's tough.
I know.
That's a tough question. You can use social media to try and reach out to the younger voters, because it's certainly not, my grandmother and my grandfather that are going to be on Twitter. It's certainly not, my mother and...
Well, a lot of them are.
Well, well, hopefully, but I can tell you that from my particular case, it's certainly not the older folks of my family that are sitting there with a smartphone, checking their Twitter and their Facebook every 10 minutes. That's not them. That's the younger generation, right? And like you said, the younger generation don't seem to vote. They vote either with their feet or they're very apathetic and they don't know what the issues are. Which, I tend to disagree with that comment has come back to me, and I tend to disagree with that because I see the Young Liberals in Sudbury, which is a very active group. They know the issues. They're voting because they want to vote. I know one particular girl whose father is very much an NDPer. I mean, his house is even orange, but yet she's Liberal.
Interesting dynamic, and when you study marketing, what there's a lot of the professional marketing companies are saying now is that the best way to get to the older generation is to communicate with the younger generation via the social media and the technology, because many of the older, I'll use older because I'm in that category, many of us that are in our 60s and 70s, we ask for advice from our 30 and 40-year-old children as to what they think we should be doing. When you get to politics, it's almost the reverse, where the parents seem to be telling the kids who to vote for, and not listening to the rationale and the reasons. And so, can we get the younger people debating with their parents, who have been lifelong NDPers and lifelong Liberals and lifelong Conservatives? Do they even have a chance to debate? Because many of the people in the older generation are voting that way because that's the way they've always voted, and they don't really know what the issues are, but they've always put the same sign up on their lawn every year.
Yeah.
How do you break that? Because it has to be an issue. And it has to be something that is not just dealing with Nickel Belt and Sudbury, but probably all the ridings and at least the provincial and federal levels. It's I guess it's got to be something that as a candidate you're facing with, because
that is a great question. And one of the bottom lines to me on that is, if you're going to talk about politics, especially at your family table, you have to have a level of respect. And I think we've lost that, to be honest with you. I think we all need to start respecting each other. I respect France Gélinas immensely. I have a great admiration for France. I am not the person who's going to be mudslinging at France Gélinas. I don't ever want to be heard saying anything negative about France Gélinas. That's not the politics that I'm going to be playing. But I would love to debate with France. I would love to have a chance, even on this show, to sit down with France on a mutually respectable platform and say, here are the issues, let's talk. That's what's needed. And that's also needed at the supper table. So if you have opposing views, if you've got a Liberal in an NDP family or an NDPer in a Liberal family, you have to be able to respect the views. So Daddy can't say to little Jimmy, okay, that's enough, you're voting NDP. Daddy's going to have the respect to say, well, why do you think that? And flush that out. And little Jimmy has to have the same respect for Daddy. saying, well, why are you voting NDP, Dad? If we had that level of respect, instead of slinging mud at each other, I bet you we'd be able to flush out a lot more. And bottom line, like I said earlier, your product is going to be better. And that's the bottom line to me, is we have to find that common ground again, which we've lost.
Now, you're talking to one of the older generation here. It's the unfortunate thing with videotaping this, you can't hide behind the microphone. But the difficulty is, and this is my perception, and probably the perception of a lot of people, is that we're not sure if we're hearing James Tregonning or if we're hearing the Liberal Party. And I think when you get into partisan politics, is it about the leaders or is it about the candidates?
Yeah. Is it local or is it provincial? And you know what? This is what I firmly believe. All politics is local. You know, when I talk about infrastructure and $29 billion, yes, that's the provincial number. But we need to have it done here in Nickel Belt. We need better roads. We cannot continue driving up to Chelmsford and going up to Oniping, dodging potholes every second, driving at 40 or 20. We can't afford to do that anymore. We need to fix that area.
All we need is $1 billion.
Yeah. We don't need 29, all we need is one. But it's the same thing when we're talking healthcare. We need to have prevention programs for concussions here in Sudbury. We need to start working on this. This is all about local politics. So, are you listening to James or are you listening to Kathleen Wynne? When I'm talking here in Sudbury, when I'm talking here in Nickel Belt, I'm talking about local issues. My campaign based on infrastructure spending, senior care, and economic diversification, only to touch on a few, right? There's also healthcare and education, there's all the other gamuts of it. But those three major points need to happen here in Nickel Belt. And you need to have somebody who's gonna work hard to make sure it happens. And that's the one thing that I'm good at, is performance measures. When I say something, it's gonna get done. It may take me a few years, right, to chip away at the mountain, but it'll get done. Because I'm a dog in a bone when it comes to stuff like that.
Are we big enough in the north to be heard?
Yes, we are big enough in the north to be heard. The problem is, and I say this I say this respectfully and not disrespectfully, but the northern seats belong to the NDP. What we need to do for Northern Voice is ensure that we have a voice at the government table. We do with Mike Gravel, we do with Dave Orizetti. We have some pretty big ministers in cabinet right now that are from the north, but we need to resound that a lot better in government. France has done a very good job at bringing forward issues in the House. She has, chipped away at the mountain, but at the end of the day, she's still in opposition. She's not at the table where the decisions are being made, and that is the issue. So in order for the North to be heard, the North has to put the politics aside, put the fact that I voted NDP for the last 50 years, put that aside, and say what is best for our area right now. What is best for Valley East? What is best for Val Karen? What is best for Hanmer? What is best for Coniston? What is best for Garson? What is best for Gogama? Who is the best person who will bring forth the issues to get me the results that I need? Because I need the results now. I don't need the results in 40 years.
And in order to get that answer, it seems as if because of the short time frame and the large geographical area, we really have to rely on what the leaders are saying and what the press is reporting on the leaders, because it's hard for you to get around to see enough people.
Yeah.
And that's why, and it wasn't anything against any of the individual candidates, it really does seem that the news of the day is what the provincial leaders are saying and what they're being reported as saying.
And it's up to us as candidates to bring that locally. So what Kathleen is saying regarding infrastructure, we have to bring that locally. Is transit an issue for us? Well, we don't have subways. We have roads. So yes, you know what? Transit is an issue for us. However, our transit issues are not building a subway. Our transit issues are fixing our roads. Otherwise, the transports can't get to Timmins, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to resound that, and that's the job of the candidate. So when you hear stuff like that kind of, infrastructure spending, and we're going to spend this and that and the other thing, call your candidate. Call us up. We have websites. You can email us. You can call us. We've got campaign offices. Drop in, talk to us, and then you'll get the actual facts. Because you're right, we can't get to every door. We won't be able to. But we do have the social media, and we do have the emails. We have everything that you need to get a hold of us.
And you know the local issues. So your job as an individual candidate is to kind of
Localize.
localize
Yeah.
the big issues.
Yeah, bring it down and say, this is what is gonna happen here in Nickel Belt. And this is what $29 billion worth of infrastructure funding means to you.
That's a good point. We're going to take a short break so that we can kind of sum up how to finish this. We have about 15 minutes left in the interview. And when we come back, we'll try to make sure we covered some things that we may have not had a chance to talk about yet, because we're just kind of having a free-flowing conversation. But one of the main objectives, one of the main goals that I was hoping for, and is definitely happening, is that we have a chance to find out a little bit more about James Tregonning and what some of the major issues are. And I think it's important that, like you say, we do start talking about these issues, but not from talking about, I've got this sign and I've always voted NDP, I'm not ever gonna change, I've always voted Liberal, I'm never gonna change, and so let's start fighting over whether the Canadians should win the Stanley Cup or the Leafs should win the Stanley Cup. I can remember 1967, so it may be the next centennial, but I think in order to be open, I think there has to be a level of awareness, and these are some pretty important issues, and it's like the tip of the iceberg that the general population sees. You don't get a chance to see the engineering blueprint to your house. You see the house.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's that engineering design work that is
The most important, yeah.
So we'll come back in about 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll continue with James Tregonning on the Learning Clinic. I'm your host, Bob Kirwan. Don't go too far away, because we're not gonna be that long. We're only gonna be about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll wrap this up with another 10 or 15 minutes to try and sum up a little bit more of what is happening over the next 4 years in this provincial campaign. And welcome back to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM, coming to you from Laurentian. I'm your host, Bob Kirwan, and this afternoon in the studio we have James Tregonning, who is with the Liberal Party in the Nickel Belt riding, and he's running in the provincial election, which is up on June 12th. And joining us now in the studio is Corinne Jordan, who is the communications manager for you?
Yeah, for my campaign. So
tell us introduce us to Corinne.
So Corinne, thank you very much for coming out today. Corinne is the communications director for my particular campaign. She is an extraordinary speechwriter. She is a fantastic artist, and I'm so proud to have her on board. So welcome, and thanks for being here, Corinne.
Thank you so much,
so
James.
Corinne,
I appreciate it.
Tell us, what should we know?
What should you know? Well, I'm not going to pretend to speak for everyone, but I certainly can speak for myself. As they say, the personal is political. One of the issues you were discussing earlier was relating to the apathy of the people in regards to politics and the connections they're making with the politicians, especially on a local level. And I'm guilty of that having taken place in my own life.
Everyone raise their hands.
Personal choices that I just could not find an interest any longer. And I think that it all comes down to integrity and relationships, and principles, and maybe a lack of them, because I think that you were discussing why would people vote. Are they a party voter? Are they a personality voter? And we see a mixture. I tend to see party voters a lot more. One's Liberal, always Liberal, one's NDP, always NDP kind of thing. But at the same time, I think that what's happening now is we need to start getting on principle, because the personality voting is not necessarily always working. If it always comes down to the candidate choice, or if it always comes down to your party, government cannot effectively work for the people in that way. It is not about one individual. It is about a set of principles by which Canadians and Ontarians will live and grow. And I think it has to be about growth and progress, and that requires a lot of change. And change is about sometimes letting go of our favorite party and saying, you know, on principle, this candidate seems to have a better platform and looks more determined than the other does this year. So for me, that's been an important consideration in the things I'm learning. James has been integral to teaching me a lot more about politics, especially at the local level, and how it affects me as an individual. And I hope that that will continue to educate the people around me.
How long have you been a team?
47 years now,
Oh,
Kadin.
Okay.
Kadin and I actually went to grade school together in Coniston, and we've been friends ever since. I remember when I was just a wee lad, I'm a musician. And what used to happen at the school is they would strap on this accordion to my shoulders, and they would put me in front of the entire school, and I would have to play a few little songs. And Kadin was always the speechwriter. She was always the masters of ceremonies. The principal always chose Kadin to stand in front and introduce and be the MC. So naturally, I was like, geez, the best person for me would be that person that stood up in grade 4 and grade 6 with James and this huge accordion strapped to him that was introducing everybody, and she came up with the best speeches and the greatest jokes, and she was the best. And she was, how old were you, 14? Not even 12?
Yeah.
12 years old.
So this election campaign, because I know that James is, your name has been around for a while. I mean, you were the candidate, you were selected quite a while ago.
March 4th.
Okay, well, not that long ago.
But I've been working at it for a while, so I've been chipping away at it since I got back. When I came back, when my dad was ill, I reached out to the Nickel Belt PLA, the Provincial Liberal Association, and said, you know, I want to get involved. And Andre Bisson was the president at the time. Basically said, well, how involved do you want to get? And I said, well, let's take it one day at a time. And you know, a year later, here I am as candidate. I've always been around them. Like the Foying at the Dam project was something that I started. The Titans Youth Movement back in Coniston. Worked with the Knights of Columbus setting up the Squires movement. Did a lot of work with marginalized youth. Used to drive back when I was living in Toronto. I was still the organist at Our Lady of the River in Winnipeg, and I would drive back absolutely every weekend because I would serve my parish here. So even though I lived in Toronto and Wasaga Beach, I was still the organist in Winnipeg, and I was here every single Sunday. So my name's been around for a long, long time.
And you've been with the party for how long, Corinne?
I'm not a party voter. I've always been on principle. But this year, and certainly knowing that James is the nominated candidate for the Nickel Belt riding, and having been living in and around the Nickel Belt most of my childhood and young adult life.
So as a communications director, that's a tough job in a campaign where there is so much voter apathy and a desire to vote your previous party line. Any strategies for trying to make people a little bit more aware?
Well, my first strategy was to really get to know where James is at and who he is as a person. I think that it's about ethos, and I think it's about who the people see him to be. And to be honest, there's not a heck of a lot of negative I could ever say about James. He's a real go-getter, and when he says he's going to advocate for you, he really does. I also like the fact that he has demonstrated a keen ability to take current resources and make that work or grow it into something even stronger than it originally was. That's something I think is a marked feature of James's character. And a lot of character. My goodness, if you know him on a personal level, you can see that he has demonstrated a real tenacity to do the right thing. In politics, that's rare nowadays. And having seen that in him, I thought, okay, I'm gonna do everything I can to try and get the message out there. And it's all about the current media structures that are in place for us to use on the current platforms, really. And it's about getting people to engage and discuss the issues and just basically create a relationship with James and the party. And that's gonna be done in all the current conventional ways. You know, social media platforms, signage, advertising, marketing strategies, events that are gonna bring some interest to learning who James is and relating with him.
Is there a provincial game plan as well as a local game plan?
For myself, right now, it's strictly focused on local and what James is doing here in the Nickel Belt. I think the Nickel Belt needs some really good attention. I think it's got a real stale presence right now. So we're gonna try to invigorate that with some new strategies.
Do you get together with the other candidates in the ridings across the province to discuss
Yes.
strategy?
Yes, we do. We have what we call a caucus meeting, if you will, for lack of a better term, every week, where we talk, it's a teleconference where we talk to all the different candidates, where we exchange ideas on what's working and what's not. And it's quite interesting. We also have what we call the Northern Caucus, for, again, a lack of a better term, where the northern candidates get together and we talk about what are the issues are. And, you know, one of the major issues for the North is cell phones. When I'm going up to go Gamma, I have no cell phones. I have a Rogers phone. If I had a Bell phone, it would work. But because I have a Rogers phone, it doesn't work. So I'm incognito for the 3 to 8 hours that I'm away, because I just don't have the cell phone issue. And that's you know, coming out through the meetings that we're having, you know, where, you know, candidates can't be at the meeting because they're on the road and there's no cell phones. They can't.
Sounds peaceful if you weren't in a campaign. So it does seem though that there has to be a coordinated effort provincially, because I guess you can't
There is.
have somebody in one riding saying something that's totally off the wall compared to what the principles are.
Yeah, that's exactly it. One of the things that Karine is doing though is that she's localizing, as we talked about
Right.
earlier, and that's really what politics is all about, in my opinion, is how do you take the big issues that are coming down from Toronto, like when we get our this is the word of the day type thing from Communication Central and saying, okay, today you've got a campaign on this particular issue. Karine will localize that, saying, you know what, is this an issue for Nickel Belt? And if it's not, then I'm sorry, we're not gonna go there, because it's not gonna be effective for our people. Example, I don't really care what happens in downtown Toronto. I don't care what happens at St. Mike's Hospital. I care what happens in my hospital. But if a program that is specific to, let's say, sick kids, or specifically for St. Mike's Hospital downtown Toronto, is that gonna resonate in Sudbury and Nickel Belt? No, I wouldn't think so. And is that an issue that we're gonna be promoting? I don't think I'm willing to put dollars and cents to promoting educational materials or literature to hand out on doors at St. Mike's Hospital. So that's a decision that Karine and I will make, to say, is this particular issue something that's feasible for us? And is it something that we can campaign on, yes or no? And if it is, how do we localize it, right? So let's say we get something at St. Mike's. Well, then my job is to pick up the phone, call Party Central and say, is there anything going on for Health Sciences North in Sudbury? Oh, there is? Oh, great. Then we localize it. And if they say, nope, sorry, not on the charts, then I say, wait till the election is over and you become government, because it will be.
Well, and the issues aren't static.
Yeah.
And they're constantly changing. And that's all about the relationships and the communication you have with your people. You see that the needs of the people change constantly, depending on what's going on during that time, and it's important that they have a voice. I think that's the micro level, and then that obviously extends to the macro level of provincial.
I imagine that the national media create the need for damage control at certain times during a campaign like this too. That's, I mean, you can't predict that, but I imagine that's part of the role of a campaign director.
Well,
The
it's
communications
incredible.
director.
I spend a lot of time looking at the comments on different posts that are made online about different candidates, and it's incredible the amount of poison and misinformation that the public receives if they trust those comments to have any truth to them. The reality is that it's become a winners and losers game. And we need to get away from the winning and losing and start
Yeah.
looking at growth and progress. Winning and losing is not politics, it's a game. So I think that for myself, seeing what I see, that's the part of it I got disappointed with and got very cynical about and pulled away from my interest in it whatsoever.
And you know, Kadin, this is where, you know, Kadin, you had mentioned that you're not a party person, you're an individual. And this is my work with Kadin. It was by talking to her saying, you know what, politics is not about winning, it's not about losing. It's about growth, it's about progress. That's what politics is about. We've got to get away, and I know I mentioned this before, but it's very important. We have to get away from this, it's you or me. It's not adversarial. Politics is about the people. Politics is about growth and progress. The only way to grow and to progress is to ... And those three little dots is what politics is. And is what leadership is. And that's the important part, is what leadership is. Who locally can best bring forth growth and progress?
Absolutely.
That's politics.
Mhm.
And I guess that's where you get into this whole perception by the older generation that has always voted a certain color, that is basically says it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who gets in there locally, whoever gets in the position of power, everybody's gonna disagree with them anyway.
You know,
It's how you work together, and
you
this
know,
is,
it's changing a culture, right? And that's very difficult to do. We all know that changing a culture is not gonna happen overnight. But somebody's gotta step up to the plate and say, it's time we start doing it. You know, and it's a matter about talking about it and getting people to believe that, you know what, we've gotta step away from that. And if you believe that, then you will. One of the things that you probably notice from me is I don't talk against another candidate. I don't think they're my opponents. I think they are my colleagues. We have different points of view, that's fine. But they are not opponents, they are colleagues.
so you're offering a choice.
Exactly, and that's what politics is. Who can best lead me or lead the growth and progress of my area?
Now, does a person who is voting for the individual, this is for both of you here now, if you can convince enough voters to vote for an individual because you're the best individual, but you're not the party in power, there's an advantage to being part of the party in power, isn't there? So
Absolutely.
now you get this prediction that you're trying to make as to who you're gonna vote in because you think the party's gonna win, so that you now have the power of the
And that's
majority.
why, and that's why I say that I think that voting on principle is the most important thing. Principle will ensure, regardless of who is the biggest party in power at that time, it will ensure that everyone is on the same note. It, no matter what, it reflects the trends and the culture in that subset at that time. And that's really a culture that cannot present itself with integrity and truth, cannot have its needs met, because you're gonna get something else for something that you weren't being truthful about. It can't be about trends, it has to be about the current truth about that culture and what it needs. If I have learned anything, it's that communication and integrity in that communication, and making sure it's very clear and direct, and it's getting to the people in question. Now, there's no question, politics is all about selling a platform and trying very hard to be the one who's going to make those decisions for you at Parliament, period. And people need to be able to find a way to get to truly know the individual who is representing them. And I think that's what's lacking. We spend too much time in the veneer and we don't look deeply enough to who they really are. What does their life say about them as a person? How far are they willing to take this message? And is the message they're providing even true? So for me, it's important that I reflect the truth of what I see in James, that incredible integrity, that drive and passion, gets very passionate and excited about issues, especially when he hears what the people want, and when he's able to know what information he needs to bring, he brings it. He will do everything in his power to do so. So at the risk of sounding very promotional, I know this to be true about James. So this is why I support him a great deal, and he's supporting me. I'm actually obtaining a tremendous education by knowing him and working with him. And it's helping me be an engaged voter. You can be reassured that I am going to be that this year. And that's changed as a result of the things he shared with me. Because there is things we can do, and I think that the lack of interest with the people, they can't complain if they're not showing a true engagement with their politicians.
You know, your question, Bob, if I can jump in here, is such a great question, and I'd really love to hear from Angelina's answer to that question. You know, I really would, because she has campaigned for many years and has never had a seat within government. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm not, you know, speaking badly about France, but she has been very successful in exactly what you were asking. And I would really like to have her answer that question. I would love to hear that from France.
I'm pretty sure that she will be on the show within the next couple of weeks. So can we, is it possible, like this is the dreamer part of me, is it possible for us to have principle-centered government where everybody sitting in the legislature is making decisions based on government and not with on principle and not with party lines?
Well, you know,
that's
such a good
That's
question.
a culture that has to change too, isn't it?
Yeah, the cultural issue, that is such a good question, and as you know, hard to answer. I would hope the answer is yes at one day, but when you're talking about cultural changes, right, it's a very difficult thing to switch. You can't just flip a switch, right? You know, if you look at industry, or if you look at a corporate structure, policies and procedures, that's easy to change. You rescind, you write a new policy, and this is what we're doing today. That's easy. That's the easy part. The hard part is getting your workers, your people, to believe in the policy. That's the cultural part, and that sometimes takes a lot of years to shift. And it's the same thing in politics. If you're talking about switching from a political party stand to an individual stand, again, that's a very difficult thing to do. Again, we bring it back to the spectrum that we were talking about the PCs over on the right and the NDPs over on the left and the Liberals right in the middle. I truly believe that the Liberals who are right in the middle of this, because they lean to the left and because they can lean to the right, they actually are that integrity, that piece of the puzzle that brings forth the individualism, that brings forth the local issues. That's what I believe, and that's why I chose to become Liberal, is because you have that particular, you know, momentum that you can look. You've got your red Tories, you've got your, you know, blue Liberals, if you will, but you do have that, you know, for lack of better term, shades of gray between your both ends of the spectrum.
So what's happening over the next 4 weeks? Communication director?
Well, we're just trying to nail down some strategies now. We're looking at, you know, getting the campaign offices opened up so that the people will have a place to come and build that relationship with James, and looking at all of the media strategies that we're going to be using in the next while to be able to communicate with the public. This is all about developing relationships right now, and how many connections we can make with the people and get them engaged. You know, we want to hear what they have to say. You know, it's important that we don't lose sight of what needs to be done here. We need to discover and understand whether or not it's time for a complete and total change in the nickel belt riding. This is about, we've done something over and over again for a very long time, and it's getting stale and old. Maybe if we take an alternative measure, we'll be able to see some different growth happening in our area. And that's what this is all about. This isn't about stomping someone out. This is about allowing change and growth to happen. So
For the last 43 years, the NDP have held nickel belt. You know,
yeah,
and the question that a lot of people are asking is, well, what have they done? And I'm not speaking badly about that. I'm just relaying the information that I'm getting. And you know what? I have racked my brain, and I don't know what they've done. I can't answer that question. It's a great question for France, but it's certainly not a question that I can answer. And I've tried, so I honestly don't know in the last 43 years what progress and what growth has happened in nickel belt. I can't see any. You know, I'm working very hard to get a $4.7 million pool in Isilda, which is a project that I've been working on now with Evidence Trisac for a little bit. We've knocked on doors, we've got petitions signed, we're going to be, working towards bringing forth a therapeutic pool for the greater city of Sudbury in Isilda. It's a fantastic project, but what have the NDP done for that project? I can't answer that question. I'm working with Ontora guys. The Ontora, I don't know if you know that organization or not, but there are a lot of people in the valley that belong to it, and they're advocating for changes to the Public Lands Act because of the road closure, the access road closure, and they can't access lakes and crown land for hunting and fishing. These guys have a huge point that needs to be brought forth. And I'm very glad to be one of the advocates that I was working with Dave Orazzetti in order to change some of the decisions that were made regarding access road closures. And how do we fix that in the future? Again, the Ontora guys went to Frangelina's office and unfortunately were turned down for some reason. And I don't know what those reasons are. They may be valid reasons, I'm sure, but I don't know what they are. They turned around, came to me, and I said, you know what, guys, you've got a really big point. Let's work on it. And I'm very proud to be working with them to do that. But again, it's not about bashing, it's not about putting someone down, it's about bringing forth the facts and bringing forth the growth and the opportunity for growth and the progress that needs to happen. That's what it's all about for me.
The Nickel Belt riding's issues don't necessarily reflect a very glamorous platform or vision. It's the Nickel Belt. These are northern communities. We have different culture, a different way of thinking and a different way of doing things. And I think it's a beautiful part of our heritage, this small town feel that I think is necessary to maintain even in some aspects. I've always thought that Sudbury reflects that environment very well and shows that culture sort of seeping in a bit. And we still have that small town feel, that really personable approach to life. And I personally don't want to see us lose sight of that. But it's not as glamorous at Parliament. It's not as big and showy as some stuff in Toronto might be. But it's still so important. We don't want to chase our youth out of this area. Some very famous people have come out of these areas because we can, get those principles and characters built in those communities because they're different than the big bad world right now. So I think that for me, at least on a personal level, because of the lack of glamour surrounding these issues, they may not get as much attention. And that's where I think the platform needs to be dealt with differently. More attention needs to be brought to it. This is about what's integral to our culture, not only in the Nickel Belt riding, but in the Sudbury and area and moving beyond that. Again, if you deal with it on a micro level and you do that in several pockets, you've got a pretty nice pool. And that's where I'm looking at it. And I think James too is just keeping that focus down to, it may not seem important to you, but it's not being talked about and no one is mentioning it. That's not government. That isn't dealing with what the people need right now.
We have to
That's
talk
the
about
problem with the current party in
and
power. So
tying that back, when we have our caucus meetings, sometimes candidates now would actually show up. And a lot of times the issues for Nickel Belt, like Conan is saying, are not glamorous ones. They are pretty contentious sometimes. But they criticize me and they will say, we can't go there. And I'm like, we have to go there. It's not that we can't go there. We have to start talking about it and we have to find solutions for it. I've thrown a lot of ministers under a bus and Liberal ministers under a bus because they refuse to talk about the issues. That is a fundamental principle that I find offensive. We need to start talking about the northern problems in order to solve the northern problems. And just because you, dear minister, or you, dear candidate, are from Southern Ontario is completely irrelevant to me. If you're going to stand in power, then you better be able to answer the questions and find the solutions to the problems. That's your job.
And yet you're dealing with such a short time frame. What is it, 35 days?
Yes.
So
that's the challenge.
to set up the offices, to get things going, and in terms of the damage control, there probably are a list of 7 or 8 hot button items that are gonna come up, and each one of them comes up and it has a 48-hour or 72-hour media window, and that's what everybody puts their teeth on for those 72 hours, and when you're trying to deal with the local nickel belt issues, the issues that people are seeing on their TV and on their Facebook and everything are the big issues where it is, the gloves come off and you fight, and then when it's over, you go to the penalty box, and when you come back out, you have another fight. And it's like, and this isn't, I don't know the answer to this, it's just, the ordinary person wants to listen to all of the issues, but you can't hear it for the big noise that's coming through the national and Ontario media, and it's, you're going to find even locally, unless you're controversial, you probably don't even get anybody paying attention to you.
That's right.
This is not a controversial radio show. People probably wouldn't pay much attention to it unless we had the other person here and you guys were throwing things at each other across it. Then they'd all want to watch the video.
Yeah.
Then they would want to watch the video.
Yeah.
But the culture shift
Yeah.
has to come there, but this pushback is coming from the big rink.
Yeah.
And this is the way they operate.
But it's a state of infection of thought rather than actual
What a
good
way of
active
putting it.
thought.
Isn't she great?
You know,
Infection of thought.
and I really have a lot more faith in the nickel belt, the people of the nickel belt riding, and I really believe they want to come back to the true basics of who they truly are. These wonderful small town community type people who are responsible for they're kind of the building blocks of a larger culture. And I really believe that if we just focus on getting back to those basics together and establishing those real small town relationships again, and getting to know one another and getting to know the truth and letting the nonsense sit on the outside of that ring, maybe once again we can renew their enthusiasm for politics, and that we are there for the people, and that the Wynne government is trying to change all that and reflect a platform that's has a lot more integrity than we've seen. You know, bad press notwithstanding, it doesn't matter what you do, you'll always have enemies today, and with all of the media platforms we have, it's an infection, but that's all it is. The antibiotic and the cure is voting on principle and actually getting to know the candidate you are voting for. And unfortunately, if people like me and people who are the supporting team do not get that message out there effectively, you may never know a perfectly good candidate who could be the changer, the game changer for your community. So that's going to be part of my function here, is to help people get to know who they're really dealing with and whether he can get the job done and whether he is the change that they want to see in their communities. We don't want to see them become a ghost town. And it's getting pretty scary right now. If this infection continues, they're seriously going to have to take a look at how they're you know, what's the alternative?
So locally, we shouldn't be voting for Kathleen, Tim, and Andrea. We should be voting for
The local
It's
person.
going to be about James.
You know, this
yeah, if
this
they
is
wanna
what
see
I
that
believe,
change.
truly, honestly, this is part of my heart, if you will, of the blood flow, is that all politics is local. It's about the local issues. It's about how do we progress, what kind of growth can happen. It's all about the voters at that particular point in time. It's about the people, and that's what politics is. I keep saying that a lot. I should use that as a campaign slogan. But
as a person running in a ward in Sudbury, I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, absolutely, because that's truly what it is. You know, one thing that that I find, and I'm probably going to get thrown under a bus by this, but this is what I believe. All the hoopla and all the hype that's coming down between Tim, Andrea, and Kathleen, all of it is hype. Honestly and truly, it's hype, and I don't buy it. That really, I the only time I yell at the TV is when the Canadians play the Leafs, or when I see something so bizarrely crazy, like this morning on the news, about how Andrea said this and Kathleen said that. I'm like, oh, give me a break. that turns me right off. That hype is just not what it's about.
So they can have Sunday dinner together and get along perfectly well.
Exactly, you know, that's not, and that just bothers me, I just yell at that. The fact that we are in a minority government situation, or were, because government is dissolved now, is an issue. So when you hear, and I mean, voters aren't stupid, voters get it, right? So when we say we're in a minority government situation, that means there's more of them than there are of us, right? So when they say, well, you didn't get this done. Well, why didn't we get it done? Because it was filibustered. Because you stopped the motion to go forward. Because you were doing this or you're doing that. And that's what a minority government is. Guys, folks, we have lived through that with the Harper government. How many times in the minority government situation were we at the polls? Right?
Yeah.
We lived through this already. We've gone there before. I do understand that the voters are sending a clear message, right? When there's a minority situation, the voters are saying, okay, we believe in you, but we're putting you on a leash. I get that, and I respect that. But at the end of the day, you have to make government work. And this is the culture shift that we're talking about. We have to make government work. The opposing parties should not be looking for the power struggle. They shouldn't be looking for the golden egg. They should be saying, let's work together.
So they should exchange shirts
Yeah.
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah. You know, I have to don a Toronto Maple Leaf jersey every now and then when I lose a bet. Even though I'm a Canadians fan and everyone knows that who's on my Facebook.
And it involves risks to make these changes.
Absolutely.
And people will have to absorb a certain level of maybe, you know, a displacement of beliefs, thoughts and ideas and values around things for a bit so that they can maybe take a look at a different. The great part about it is that, you know, if this party doesn't work for you in this area at that point, then you've got a time when you're gonna be able to vote someone different in. And that's just the way it works. At the same time, what is working? Is that being discussed at all? What is working in the Nickel Belt riding right now? Well, from what we're seeing, we've got a stagnant culture, less growth happening, in fact a lot of regression going on, and a lot of people trying to get the heck out of these areas because it's just dying. That's not a necessary thing. These have been thriving communities for a long time, and that can be brought back again. And it, you know, it's the veins that feed the heart of our culture. And for me to say 10 or 20 veins aren't important and it's only the arteries that matter would be a foolish thing for me to think.
And you know,
And all of it has to be clear and worked through. So.
absolutely, and I mean the Ring of Fire is an example of that. You know, and Cote Gold or I Am Gold, that was just what Cote was bought out by I Am Gold, the gold mining Gogama area. This is where you need to start working with these companies. You know, when Cliffs actually put a quote on the budget saying, we are very happy to see this happen and we will be keeping an eye on what's going on. That's progress. That is progress to me. When I see Cote Gold or I Am Gold sending me a Facebook message saying, the First Nations agreement regarding the Ring of Fire is so important to us, James. Thank you for getting that done. That's important. Yet these are the big shiny items that belong in Toronto, but they do have local flavor because they impact our particular riding. I Am Gold is definitely an issue for Gogama because that'll revive that particular community. You know, and the fact that there may be 300 votes in Gogama, I don't care. One vote is important to me. If I can get 324 by helping I Am Gold set up shop in Gogama, good for me. But I'm not after that. I'm just after for that one vote. I'm after to make sure that that community survives. The same thing for Cape Real. The same thing for Chelmsford or Hammer or all the communities that are in Nickel Belt, Coniston, Wanapitei. These are all important communities. Esther, Wanap. These are all important communities.
And
you know?
wonderful people living in it.
Absolutely.
I mean, let's, you know, we're a little biased because our roots are from these communities, but I really do believe that they are a people of principle, and they do believe in the right thing, doing the right thing. I think that's who they need to represent them right now. Someone who's just interested in doing the right thing and not about glamour and not about self and not about aggrandizing who you are at the upper levels, but someone who's willing to get down and dirty and put the hoodie on and get dirty at the knees for a while and do the work.
You know,
so
part of my nomination speech is I am here to serve you. That is the one thing that I truly believe in. politics to me is about serving the people. Like, I am a politician, I should change that and scrap politician, put server. Because really, that's what I'm there to do. I'm there to help people, I'm there to serve the people. And that's the important part for me. It's not about the pedestal, it's not about the glamour. It's all about the dirty hoodie and the muddy knees.
It's a good,
It's a good thing I'm not a stylist.
good. That's a good place probably to stop, before we get into whether you can still play the accordion. So Corinne Jordan, you've got your work cut out as a
Oh my goodness.
communications director, and in a short period of time, James Tregonning, you've got your work cut out, getting out into the population and talking to people.
Mhm.
And this whole culture shift may in fact be forced upon us by the younger generation who never listened to their parents anyway, and may, once they start turning out to the voting booths in numbers, then things may change, and we may become a principle-centered
Mhm.
province. Who knows? It's been great.
Great conversation,
And,
Bob. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
Thanks very much for having me, Bob.
Yeah, the people who have been listening, I think it's been very informative. We will, like I say, extend invitations to all of the candidates, and it is such a short time frame. I mean, you've got almost a year to run for your ward in the municipal election, and 35 days for the province. But we will see where it goes.
Mhm.
So again, I want to thank you for listening to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. We've gone longer than we thought we were going to go, but I think we've covered more than we thought we were going to cover too. And I want to thank James Tregonning, who's running for the Liberal Party in the Nickelbelt riding, and Corinne Jordan, who is the communications director for his campaign team, and wish you the best of luck. And again, stay tuned to CKLU for the rest of the afternoon.
Your shows are amazing. I love listening to your shows. Seriously, I'm like, if I'm not home, I have it streamed, and it's recorded on my, I just love your shows. The one you had with Ron Dupree, oh, what a wonderful conversation. The time just flew by.
And I'll run now.